I initially composed a list of my top 10 Game Boy Advance games a long time ago, but since then I've played more from this system than I heard about from other people's top 10s or through friends' recommendations, and a lot of those games were so good I ended up making a second list. The Game Boy Advance is such a large and splendid library of games that I'm giving it the coveted top 20 treatment. Now before we begin, I have some rules to apply. First, I will allow multiple entries from any intellectual property, however they will be restricted to one game cartridge per series. Second, no direct ports of NES or SNES games. Remakes will be allowed, provided they've been updated appropriately and there's enough new content for it to be considered a separate game to the original. Third, and this is the most important, this list is not fact. It is my opinion being presented as fact, so please try not to get too upset if your favourite game is either not on the list or it is on the list but not as high as you want it to be. Now the red tape is in place, welcome ladies and gentlemen to part 1 of Snooty Nerds, Top 20 Game Boy Advance Games, numbers 20 through 11. After the unmitigated disaster that was Shining Soul, Sega pulled their finger out and brought us a surprisingly superior sequel. Shining Soul 2 is a game I've already reviewed in full, but to sum up, it's basically the Shining series' take on a Diablo-style game, complete with random item drops and quirky NPCs. There's 8 different classes to play as, each with their own unique skill sets and plenty of character customization, such as playing as a yellow werewolf specialising in claws and self-healing. In addition, it's also exciting to stumble across mystery equipment that needs to be evaluated before it can be worn. It's like opening a booster pack in a trading card game. Speaking of which, I now play Segway and Attack Mode! Back in the old days, I dabbled in a couple of trading card games, one such being Yu-Gi-Oh! The trouble is, I didn't have a lot of real-life friends to play the game with, but with video games like Stairway to the Destined Duel, I get to have a quick match whenever I want. Now, I know that 7 Trials to Duel, aka Day of the Duelist, has better graphics, music, and more expressive characters, but it also has cheaper opponents, who always have cheap cards in their hand right from the start. Also, a feature unique to Stairway is the password system. You see, the real-life Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards used to have codes on them that you could enter to get that card in your video game deck. Of course, nowadays you can just look them up online, making the game even more fun than it was back in the old days. Also, Stairway was the Yu-Gi-Oh! Game I grew up with, so it's got a lot more nostalgia for me personally. But whichever one you choose, it's always fun to trash talk your opponents, just like in the anime.
You'll soon repent of your uppity attitude, Yugi. When you face the power of the almighty, blue-eyed white dragon!
There are some things money can't buy, kinda. And one of those things is an indestructible sense of faith in the heart of the cards, as my deck has bestowed upon me the Book of Secret Arts, which gives my Dark Magician another 300 attack points, and furthermore, I now equip the Sword of Dark Destruction, which gives him another 400 attack points, making my Dark Magician strong enough to slay your dragon!
It can't be!
That's cute, all, but it doesn't hold the candle to my winning Royal Flush! How's that for the hard the cards?
There once was a girl who loved gambling, on adventures that took her to random. She crashed a card game, her own self to blame, and now she's a sushi queen salmon. Now would you look at that, 2 licensed games back to back. Star Wars is treated much better than most other films when it comes to video game tie-ins. When Revenge of the Sith came out, the Game Boy Advance got a Turtles in Time style beat-em-up. In fact, some of you may remember this one from my video about the top 10 Star Wars games. Play as Anakin or Obi-Wan with upgradable force powers and epic boss fights, to the background sound of John Williams' amazing soundtrack. Remember the days when everyone complained about every single aspect of a prequel trilogy? Looking back nowadays, we didn't really have it that bad. Whilst on the subject of looking back on the good old days, there was a time when no one would have suspected that a Sega Mega Drive game would have a sequel on a Nintendo system. Gunstar Superheroes, which released in the PAL regions under the idiotic name of Gunstar Future Heroes, is everything you want in a run-and-gun shooter. A variety of guns, more explosions than a Michael Bay film, optional melee combat, and even multiple endings depending on the difficulty setting. Not to mention those eye-catching new character designs. Might I say what a charming smashing leotard you have on? I'm not a big fan of racing games, but the exception is Mario Kart. It's always fun to race while throwing shells at the other racers. Now, it's true that Super Circuit doesn't innovate the franchise in the way that Double Dash or the later entries did, but it's also a solid pick-up-and-play Mario Kart game in its truest possible form. Whatever new system Nintendo comes up with, Mario Kart will always be a solid, reliable choice. In fact, on a personal note, when my dad first bought me my Game Boy Advance all those years ago, Super Circuit was one of the first 2 games I got with the system. The other was Power Rangers Time Force, if you're wondering. Power Rangers and Mario Kart. Interesting combination. Mario has always worked surprisingly well in RPG format, such as when he and Luigi travel to the Bean Kingdom to recover Princess Peach's voice. Like Golden Sun, Superstar Saga revolves around solving puzzles to progress, but with elements from Super Mario RPG, such as timed hits and on-screen encounters. We may never get a follow-up to Super Mario RPG, but the Mario and Luigi series isn't that far behind. The slapstick way the Mario Brothers work together to solve puzzles reminds me of a Tom and Jerry cartoon. The Sega Mega Drive had Phantasy Star. The Super Nintendo had Final Fantasy. The original PlayStation also had Final Fantasy. And the Game Boy Advance's signature RPG was Golden Sun. For the sake of this list, we're going with Part 2, The Lost Stage. The graphics show just what the Game Boy Advance is capable of, with near PlayStation quality sprite work. The gameplay is pretty solid as well. Characters with elemental powers to exploit weaknesses in battle, and psychic powers to solve puzzles in the overworld. There's also the Pokemon-like creatures called Jin that you can mix and match for additional powers. It's just a shame that there hasn't been a new Golden Sun game in over a decade. I guess the sun is set on this franchise. Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Olaf, if you think we're on the run? We are the stars who will stop your fun and games. We are the stars who will make you wince in pain. So who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Olaf, if you think Orange Star's done? Captain Nell has tales to tell of people getting hurt, like that time the censors made her lengthen up her skirt. So who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Olaf, if you think Orange Star's done? Right, now pay attention, chaps. Number 13 on this list is Advance Wars. It's part of a long-running series of military strategy games, and the first one to be released in English. Permission to speak, sir. I personally prefer Fire Emblem myself, sir, as you can poke enemy units with spears. Yes, James, we'll get to Fire Emblem soon enough. Anyway, the allied country of Orange Star is at war with the country of Blue Moon. We are to rout the enemy by directing ground troops, tanks, planes, and other weapons of war. Aye, and I assume the Orange Stars are doing their bit, not just sitting back and letting us do the lion's share of the work. Quite right, Fraser. Before embarking on a mission, you are to select one of 3 Orange Star officers to assist you. They each have different skills that can turn the tide of battle. It's all about strategy and tactics. So don't just pick Sammy because of her skimpy costume. That is strategy and tactics. What will do, Walker? I'd be worried about the poor girl catching a chill, Mr. Bennering. Perhaps I should let her borrow the sweater my sister Dolly knitted for me. Yes, we'll play that by ear, Godfrey. Uncle Arthur? I had Andy use his field skill and it didn't do anything. Yes, Frank, you see, Andy's skill is to repair damage to all the allied units. It doesn't make much of a difference if you use it at the start of the game, to understand, when everyone's at full health, you see. Stupid boy. Here's another strategy game. Final Fantasy Tactics is considered one of the best spin-offs of the Final Fantasy franchise. The original on PlayStation is a masterpiece, and Tactics Advance is a solid sequel. It brings back the tactical, grid-based gameplay and the job system that lets you experiment with different classes and combinations of skills. Yes, the judges banning certain weapons is an annoyance, but at least they worked their bureaucracy into the story, and it does force you to, use actual strategy. However, the story won't be to everyone's tastes. It's about a group of modern-day kids who get sucked into the world of Final Fantasy by a magical book. But remember, This game came out in the early 2000s, decades before Japan became unhealthily obsessed with all that repetitive, copy-paste isekai shit. Seriously, if you want a drinking game, have a look on Crunchyroll and take a sip for every anime that has "in another world" in the title. You'll be plastered within 5 minutes. And now for a recap before we reach the top spot on this part of the list. Number 20, Shining Soul 2. Number 19, Yu-Gi-Oh! Stairway to the Destined Duel. Number 18, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Number 17, Gunstar Superheroes. Number 16, Mario Kart Super Circuit. Number 15, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Number 14, Golden Sun The Lost Stage. Number 13, Advance Wars. Number 12, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. And now, number 11! Mega Man Zero 3, considered one of the greatest Mega Man games. You play as Zero, the most powerful robot in the universe, built specifically to destroy the original Mega Man. It's the peak of handheld hack-and-slash gameplay, on par with Capcom's Devil May Cry series, with all kinds of upgrades and special moves to unlock. It's hard, but it makes you feel amazing when you beat a level with an S rank and get the boss's special move. Not to mention a top-notch presentation and a satisfying ending, where Zero finally gets rid of his inner demons that he's been struggling with ever since X4, and he began to question what he was fighting for! So that's 20 through 11. Make sure you subscribe so that you'll be there for part 2. Have fun till then!